Okay, I'm going to call the Budget, Finance, and Government Committee to order and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Councilmember Gruber?
Here.
Councilmember Martin?
Here.
Councilmember Monroe? Vice President Harris? Here. President Melendez?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, clerk. And let for the record show that Councilmember Monroe is in fact on her way. And I swear I saw Councilmember Patterson.
He is here.
So he will be here shortly too. We have two presentations today. Our first is from Rochester District Heating Cooperative, which this is actually an introductory in the People, Parks, and Public Works Committee, but before I knew which committee it was going to be assigned to, I had asked them to come present here. I think it's very appropriate anyways. This is hopefully going to be a bit of an overview of the work that Rochester District Heating does generally, but also specifically we are being asked to spend about $35,000 to be the matching portion of a grant that they'll talk about a bit. And let the record show that Councilmember Patterson, Monroe, and Lupien have all joined us. So thanks to everyone for being here. So with that, I will turn it over to John. I'd love for you to also tell us how to pronounce your last name so I don't get it wrong. And you're welcome to come right up to the podium. Take about 5 minutes, and we'll ask some questions afterwards.
Thank you very much. Last name is Duchesneau.
I knew that. Thank you.
I've heard it everywhere you can imagine. Thank you very much for allowing us to come here and talk about Rochester District Heating and a project that we're looking at doing. It will be a nice introductory of RDH if you're not aware of us. So we'll do a quick overview of RDH, update you on some of the legislative acts that are happening out of Albany, talk about the Interloop North project, which we're very excited about. and then we'll talk about why we're actually here and presenting. So Rochester District Heating was formed in 1985. We took over the steam cooperative or steam distribution system from RG&E, a small portion of it. And today we supply superheated steam to 50 buildings in the city of Rochester, about 9 million square feet of space. It's used for all different purposes. Of course, in the winter, it's primarily heating, but also domestic water, commercial hot water, food processing, humidification, and a lot of other things. We were established as a member-owned nonprofit cooperative, a very unique business model. And because of that business model, we received special legislation from Albany that exempted us from Public Service Commission regulation. Our system eliminates the need for those 50 buildings to have their own boilers, and because of economies of scale, we're extremely efficient. And we operate 24/7 all year round, so we never have a plant shut down. Unfortunately, RG&E shut us down the other day for the first time in 5 years, but we got through that. And most importantly is, although we burn natural gas in our boilers today to produce that superheated steam, we're constantly looking for electrification, decarbonization opportunities for us, for the city of Rochester, and some of that may directly challenge our steam system, meaning they would come off of steam and go on to a different type of a system. I'm not going to go through this in detail, but I wanted to include it so you could review it at another time. But the important thing is, if you look at the bottom left, you can see the city buildings that are on our cooperative today. This slide also, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but what we're going to be talking about with the Interloop North geothermal project is really the bottom left corner of the diagram, where we're looking at putting in a central bore field for geothermal energy exchange and distributing that energy through around the Interloop North new parcels that would be developed. And I'm sorry, I should step back a little bit. I'm John Shano. I am the general manager of RDH. Behind me, I've got Ryan McCauley. Ryan is our chief financial officer. And next to Ryan is Bill Coe. And Bill Coe is a vice president at EMCOR Services Bethlehem, who would be a partner with us on this project if it moved forward. So we're really talking about that bottom left corner, geothermal, but doing it on a community level basis, which in itself is somewhat unique. So Albany has been working on this Utility Thermal Energy Networks and Jobs Act and the regulations that come along with it. They did promulgate the rules in July of 2024. We had met with the Department of Public Service talking about RDH, what we do, how we do it in our business model. And surprisingly, they incorporated our comments into their rulemaking. So that was very important for us because, number one, it maintained our non-regulated status for the steam cooperative. And number two, it provides for non-regulated opportunities for these thermal energy networks for those systems that are operated by cooperatives, homeowner cooperatives, cooperatives such as ours, etc. So it appears very encouraging that if we were to own and operate one of these, it would be a non-regulated utility, if you will. That's important because the type of business we're in as a nonprofit member-owned cooperative, it would be inappropriate for anybody else to set the rates than us because we're not looking at making a profit. If we were regulated, our annual budget process would have to go to the Public Service Commission and be approved for whatever period of term. As it stands today, these systems can't be bifurcated in ownership. We were looking at possibility of partnering with the utility, us running the transfer of the energy and then the distribution. Today, that does not look like it's feasible within the current rulemaking. We also have the all-electric buildings law that was passed. That takes effect January 1st of 2026. What that means is any building that's built in New York State that is 7 stories or less, with a few exceptions, have to be built with all-electric appliances and utilities. No natural gas. The only exception would be for a gas or diesel powered backup generator. There are a few exceptions to that. It doesn't impact buildings that are being repaired or renovated at this time, although there's some speculation that that may happen. And then in 2029, this All Buildings Electrification Act will apply to all buildings, all new constructed buildings. So with the Inner Loop North, we're proposing the implementation of a central bore field and a pumping station to basically distribute geothermal energy to all the new developments that occur as part of the Inner Loop North redevelopment, infill and redevelopment. Why is that good? By doing it from a central point, we can take those costs and spread it across the whole matrix of development that would occur, and any capital costs could be spread over a long-term agreement. It would allow for those buildings to be built as electrified buildings per the All Electric Buildings Act, so it enables that, and I believe that that will really promote the development of those parcels. Okay. So a couple of notes that you've heard is the All Buildings Electrification Act, our status as a cooperative, and now we're going to talk about NYSERDA and the incentive. This is a little bit dated, but I'm going to skip over this. It's just the Inner Loop North drawing from the city. So NYSERDA, we and MCOR submitted an application to NYSERDA to do a study on this, a flex tech study. And that application has been approved. The study cost is $138,000. NYSERDA said that they would provide 75% of that as their cost share, leaving the remaining $35,000 of funds that are required to deliver this scoping study. So the scoping study has 5 tasks in it. The first is to develop the concept. The second is to collect data. And in RDH's last Board of Directors meeting, a resolution was approved to allow me to move forward with the scoping study at risk through task 2, and then if we were unable to secure the $35,000 in funding, we would pause the scoping study at that point and potentially have about $5,000 at risk. If it was funded by the city, then we would continue on and we'll go through the task 3 energy analysis, task 4 economic analysis, and then the task 5 final report, all being done in about 44 weeks. At the end of which we would have an idea of, is this a feasible project that will provide reliable, cost-effective energy to those buildings to allow them to be constructed, fully electrified on day 1. Again, we're partnering with MCOR. GeoOptimize is a bore field specialist that would be involved in this in phase 3 or task 3, I do believe, Bill.
One of the important technical aspects of the analysis would be to ensure that there's enough space within the Inner Loop North area so that they could share thermal energy across the buildings, and it would be capable of supplying enough thermal energy into and out of the bore field to ensure that the buildings remain functional for the life of the system. So there would be an important part of the study.
I included in your package the detailed cost breakout of each phase. I'm not going to go through this. Those numbers are simply the high-level numbers I already reviewed with you. So we're looking for the city to fund the $35,000. That would enable us to go through the entire study. In doing so, we would be able to complete the study, hopefully move forward into design and ultimately project execution. And we would be able to deliver this with a 75% coverage from NYSERDA, whereas if the city did it directly, it would be a 50% from NYSERDA. We would be able to do this in a cooperative model like we do with the STEAM system, so we could become non-regulated, non-profit, member-owned type system. We can incorporate this into the design of the inner loop. We would need some resource availability from several parties, including the city, David Riley and Ann Spalding and others. And if necessary, we would ask the city to supply us some support for legislative and regulatory requirements as they arise. So this project supports the state and local climate action plans. It allows for the electrification of the new developments. It enables community-based electrification instead of individual buildings. It could act as a proof of concept on this size scale that says it works, so let's go ahead and do it elsewhere in the city, state, country. It would give us the ability to collect data and look at the performance of this type of a system. It eliminates the needs for future transition from fossil fuels, because these buildings would be built with electrification on day one. I truly believe that it'll promote development in these parcels. I'll be honest in telling you that I was not an advocate of filling in the inner loop east. It didn't seem to make a lot of sense until the shovels were in the ground. I was like, this is really amazing, and they filled up fast. And this enables resiliency in the energy supply because of reliability and redundancy. And just like Rochester District Heating, our uptime in the 40 years we've been operating is 99.99%. And so Rochester District Heating, my staff, we know how to run these systems. We've got a business model that's worked for 40 years, and we'd be encouraged if the city would fund this for us and allow us to deliver this project. You might be asking, what's in it for RDH? Nothing really, other than it expands our energy portfolio. As a nonprofit, we're not looking at, trying to build profit into this or anything like that. It enables that electrification of the buildings, which we're trying to do anyhow. We're looking at other projects as well, and some sewer heat recovery projects and things like that, as well as how do I decarbonize my existing steam plant and transition that off of fossil fuels.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the presentation, John. I want to make sure there's time for council members to ask questions. Let me start by just saying that as we think about the state of utilities and the state of our community and how utilities are distributed and how expensive they are, I think it's important to look at some of the existing models that are around, like RDH, that have done this work, that have done similar work very well for many years, and think about ways that we can incorporate them into some of the action that the city is taking, which is precisely why I think it's important now to get a study going on the Inner Loop North. So I'm very pleased that you had already applied for the study, and that the match, the $35,000, is a fairly minimal investment for the city to make it such an important opportunity. And it sounds like we will get results of the study well before there would be shovels in the ground at the Inner Loop North.
I would believe that the current schedule for the Inner Loop North and this project would coincide with each other very well.
Deputy Mayor, I just want to make sure you agree. There's no shovels in the ground in the next 52 weeks.
I think it's safe to say that's the case.
Okay. Councilmember Patterson, let's start with you.
I am a huge fan of this study and this proposal. I just want to see if I can challenge you to go a little further than what you're thinking right now. The study area is totally enclosed within the Northeast District. Immediately to the north of your proposed study area is a residential or significant residential neighborhoods. Sile Street runs basically right through the middle. You've got North Union to the east, and to the west you have North Street. Those areas are significantly residential, 1 and 2 family. There's a lot of room for development in there. We are looking at doing some additional development in there. Would you be interested in starting a conversation about potentially expanding this opportunity into this area? Because, just the whole notion of being able to heat and cool your house for a de minimis cost, and at the same time improve. I'm a big fan of Passive House, so I'm sold. You don't have to convince me of what you're doing and why it's a good thing to do and how this will basically wipe out everybody's heating and cooling cost in my district if I can get this to the house. So my question is, would you be interested in furthering this conversation? I understand this is this study, but I'm kind of challenging you to reach a little farther to the north and look at expanding your reach into those specifically and particularly residential neighborhoods. Heck, Council President, y'all got a brand new development right over there at Ibero, right? And we're going, I understand it's a little easier to do this with big buildings, big open space, not a whole lot of cost to drop your infrastructure in, but I don't see any reason. I would hope that you guys would be willing to consider what it would cost to go into the public right of way to get access to residential houses, just as we currently do when we're going in and we're making water line replacements. I just want you to think about it and just let me know what. Obviously I can't get a commitment from you now, but what's your quick thought on that?
Councilperson Patterson, thank you for the question. Absolutely.
Okay.
We already are.
Oh, good. Well,
Right.
let's.
So the one slide that talked about proof of concept, we got to get through the study and understand what level of energy is available, therefore how many buildings can it support. It may be that north of the inner loop can't be supported by the bore field that we're going to study initially, but we're constantly looking at areas in the city where we can replicate, duplicate, put in new, and we've already talked about north of the inner loop.
Okay.
Even as part of the study potentially.
Okay. So in the slide you had, so folks, I'd encourage you to take a look at the slide, and I hope that we'll be putting the slides on our city website so folks can look at it. One of the sources that you were looking at for the geothermal energy was the aquifer for the city of Rochester. For folks in the community, the aquifer in the city of Rochester was horribly contaminated by Eastman Kodak Company way back in the yonder. We do not drink that water, so don't worry about it. We don't touch it. But is that a real possibility of being able to access the aquifer under the city of Rochester to draw some of that heat from it?
Another excellent question. We did a scoping study for a community heat pump project that evaluated all the sources of energy in the area of the, in this particular project, the southwest corner of the inner loop.
Okay.
Across the Broad Street Bridge and a few buildings on the other side of the river. We evaluated river water, aquifers, geothermal, several other sources, and we kept coming back to one primary source of energy exchange, and that is the Monroe County Pure Water System.
Okay.
And you'd use that water just like you'd use the water from ground source, but you'd be removing energy from and adding energy to the sewer system.
Okay.
That project is still on the table. The initial results said that it wasn't financially practicable, so we're reverse engineering it, re-estimating it, and trying to come up with a viable project there. With respect to the aquifers and the river in particular, as we investigated that use, we found that it was extremely regulated.
Okay.
Very burdensome.
Okay.
And very expensive, both on a cost perspective as well as a permitting perspective.
Okay.
So we discarded those as options for that project.
Okay.
Councilmember Patterson?
Yes.
One of the ways that I ended up talking to RDH was I initially thought that the city of Rochester should consider a thermal energy network ourselves, and part of the conversation was at the state level it makes a lot less sense for municipality to do it than these existing nonprofit entities. So the goal for me at least is let's develop as a council, as an administration, as a city, let's develop a relationship with RDH and see where these conversations can go. And I think this study is a great way to do that and to be able to be expansive. Just for the sake of time now, I'd like
I'm done. I'm happy. You know, I can spend
We're
days
very
talking
excited about the opportunities as well.
I can spend days talking to you guys, and we ain't got days to talk to you, so I'm done talking.
But this will be the first of many conversations. Councilmember Monroe?
I'm very happy that this has come forward to us. Certainly I am in support of it, and the fact that you're already kind of looking ahead if there are ways to eventually create such things for residential areas that are already existing, and to be able to push into houses or current housing stock and not just new development. Is that a possibility or one of those things that would be considered after this piece is determined?
That would probably end up being a follow-on, but working with MCOR, we're constantly looking at locations in the city, whether it be within the inner loop or outside the inner loop, and looking at energy opportunities to help decarbonize and electrify buildings, whether it be a single-family residential unit or a multi-family residential unit, commercial industrial property. So we're absolutely wanting to look at that and expand.
Great. Thank you.
Councilmember Martin?
Thank you so much for the work you all are doing. I really love that it's a worker-owned cooperative. So some of the questions I have surround the county and whether there's any involvement with the county legislature, with the county executive. Like, where does the county stand with all of this?
On this particular project, the involvement that the county has is that they've got a huge sewer main that runs right down through that area. And so in our initial meeting with both the city and county and the city's engineer, we discussed that. For this project, I'm not sure I see a good relationship with the county, but our community heat pump project, absolutely, because we would be looking at buildings like City Hall potentially and the Monroe County Civic Center.
Sounds good. And with the results of the study, would those be available to the city and NYSERDA?
At the conclusion of each task that we go through, we submit a report to NYSERDA, and they give us a go, no-go decision at each point. At the conclusion of task 5 is the final report. That report becomes the public-facing report through NYSERDA. They don't really like it distributed until they've had their staff go through and wordsmith it and make sure that everything is appropriate for public-facing documents. We still do not have that document back from NYSERDA for our community heat pump project. And that's been the better part of a year, so it tells you the extent of what we gave them in the review that they need to do. But absolutely, and with a core team that would include employees from the city, they're going to have that knowledge to begin with, and certainly could share it.
Sounds good. And my final question, has RDH previously received any support from the city of Rochester or the county, financially or in any collaborative capacity?
Not to my recollection.
Okay. Well, you have my full support, and I hope we can continue this relationship.
Awesome. Thank you.
Any further questions? I'm sorry, I can't see on this side exactly. Councilmember Lupian, President Melendez, Council Vice President Harris.
I have more of a comment. I'm excited to hear that you guys are moving in this direction, and while you guys are in those discussions, please consider the South District.
We're considering all the areas.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your time. And this will not be voted on today in this committee, but obviously we'll stay in touch as things progress.
And Ryan did pull up in the legislative agenda for the 25th, and if you look at that, there's a more comprehensive package in there that we provided to Councilperson Gruber, and that one talks about our community heat pump project as well. So feel free to take a look at that. There's a lot more information. Thank you very much for your time and your support. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Moving along, we're going to have another, just a brief presentation or discussion with our friends from the Office of Financial Empowerment on the Home Prosper program. So I'll turn it over to Angela and Madeline.
Hello, hello, good afternoon. So we're going to talk a little bit about one of our new projects for this upcoming year. And so a little bit of background, the City of Rochester is part of the Living Cities Closing the Wealth Gap network. So this project is funded by Living Cities and was really created in like partnership with Living Cities as well as a few of our different departments here at City Hall, I want to say 2 years ago. But I'm going to turn it over to Madeline to really talk more in depth about this program and what we're hoping to accomplish over the next 12 months.
Great, thanks Angela. So if we could go to the next slide, we'll talk through a little bit about what the Home Prosper program is and how we got here. So the Home Prosper program is a both financial counseling and first-time home buyer training program that specifically is targeting and prioritizing Head Start families. The goal with this program really, and we'll get into that a little bit more in the next slide, is to assist families in reaching their homeownership goals. It doesn't necessarily have to be within the first year of them being in this program, but really in the next 5 years, if they're hoping to purchase a home, how can we assist them in doing so? In terms of reach, this program will engage 60 participants, and they will be eligible to receive a $2,000 grant after they participate in the program. And this program is administered in partnership with 2 community-based organizations. The first is the Housing Council at Pathstone, as well as Action for a Better Community, and we're really hoping to launch this program in the next 2 months for spring of 2025. Next slide. So the overall goals for the program really fall into these 4 categories. The first is that we really hope to increase access to 2 services that are really fundamental to this office and really to our mayoral agenda in general, which is financial counseling as well as first-time home buyer training. In addition to that, we also want this program to reduce barriers and dispel myths around homeownership, right? So how can we increase access to services and pathways to achieving homeownership, particularly for families who have been historically disenfranchised and excluded from the homeownership journey. In addition to that, we also know that purchasing a home doesn't necessarily happen in a year. It can take multiple years, and so we really want to help families prepare early and increase their financial capability now so that they can achieve that long-term goal that they have. And lastly, we do want to connect families in this program to existing resources that can make homeownership more affordable, specifically the Rochester Housing Authority Homeownership Voucher Program, as well as various city and state grants. Next slide. So how did we get here? As Angela said, we were awarded a grant from Living Cities as we are a member of the Closing the Gap Network, specifically with the aim of closing the racial wealth gap. And one way to do that is through homeownership. And so we received a assessment from Living Cities in 2022, really focused on the state of the racial wealth gap in Rochester, and through multiple surveys and focus groups, Living Cities identified very specific barriers to achieving homeownership, but specifically for Black and brown residents in the city. And some of those barriers that they identified were lack or limited access to homebuyer education, the housing cost burden and down payment costs, and they also found that lack of mentorship and guidance on actually navigating the homebuyer process was a major barrier. In addition to that, we also heard overwhelmingly that Head Start families don't necessarily have as much access to first-time home buyer resources, and so we wanted to make sure that families with young children were prioritized for this program. Next slide. So what does the program actually look like? You'll see here the client journey. It will start with first-time home buyer training through the Housing Council. This is about a 4-hour training that already exists at the Housing Council. In addition to that, they also will have to complete at least 3 financial counseling sessions through the Financial Empowerment Center, which is in our office. And as a part of those 3 financial counseling sessions, they will have to achieve at least 1 financial goal. Oftentimes that's related to increasing their credit score by 35 points, increasing their savings, reducing their debt. Once they've gone through this financial counseling, once they've gone through the first-time homebuyer training, they will then be awarded the grant award of $2,000. And we'll also connect them to other resources through our office, like a safe and affordable bank account that is Bank On certified. And grant awards are not restricted to purchasing a home, right? We understand that, again, this is a journey. Purchasing a home can take time. And so it is not required of them to use it to buy a house, but really any goal that they've identified through the FEC counseling. Next slide. In terms of eligibility, they must be a City of Rochester resident. They must have an income of 60% AMI or lower. They also have to identify as a Black or Brown resident. And then we are, as we said, prioritizing Head Start or early Head Start families. And this is really why this partnership with ABC is so essential. They will be connecting us to these families and hosting the initial workshops as well. So, and that is all we have.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. Just a couple of quick questions for me, then I'll turn it over to my colleagues. First, you mentioned, will you go back to the last slide, whoever was controlling? So does the 60% AMI, does that map to the eligibility criteria for Head Start?
It does, yes.
So every Head Start family will be
They
eligible.
would be eligible, yes.
And have there been conversations with ABC yet about, I mean, there's obviously hundreds and hundreds of Head Start families, what the process will be to get it down to 60?
So those conversations have been happening. Essentially, depending on interest, we will have to do a random lottery. We are going to be offering 3 info sessions. We're kind of calling them workshops because at the info session, you will also learn a lot of these resources. By attending the workshop, 2 will be in English, 1 will be in Spanish. They will have the opportunity on site to apply for the program. And then, as I said, that's where, we would have to probably do a lottery system.
Got it. Thanks. And last set of questions. So the entirety of this program is being funded by the Livable Cities Grant?
The Living Cities Grant.
Living Cities Grant.
Yep.
And is this a program that they helped to develop, or it was just us taking the dollars that we have and putting it there?
Yeah, so they, a little bit of A and a little bit of B. So yes, they were very, very invested in us focusing on Head Start families. They worked really closely with us to analyze the data from the needs assessment that they did, and they helped us sort of prioritize based on what we were saying the local context was and the local resources were. And so obviously we know that we have amazing housing counselors here in Rochester. The Housing Council is incredible in the work that they do. So we really wanted to build upon that. And if what we kept hearing was that these folks don't know that resource exists, we didn't want to recreate something. We wanted to really amplify the resources that exist to fill those gaps.
Great. Thank you. Vice President Harris, followed by Councilmember Smith.
Thank you. I'm very much a fan of this program, and I'm excited to see the results, how many families it affect. Actually see the families, take advantage of this. But one of the things I'd like to suggest, maybe the next time you roll this out, is considering partnering with NACA. They can help you expand your reach to people who are in need of these services.
Yeah, thank you. And one of our goals for this is to really reach families that maybe wouldn't have known a NACA existed, and then really share with them those resources so that maybe they're not ready for NACA right now, but would they be in 2, 3, 4 years? And so certainly NACA is going to be one of the resources that we share with these participants.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes, 2 questions. Can you translate that 60% into a dollar amount? What's the dollar amount?
I don't think we can off the top of our head, but we can get that to you later, if that's okay. Thank you.
Okay. And under the list of barriers, how were the barriers identified, and how did credit score not make it into the list of barriers?
You're speaking for the Living Cities assessment, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So those were just a few of the barriers that were included in the report. So actually, the report I'm happy to share with you all after the meeting essentially goes through pre-purchase, post-purchase, barriers for homeowners, right? And so one of the things that we didn't include on the slide is eligibility for accessing a home loan. That was a barrier, to your point. So we are happy to share with you the full list of barriers that they found for Rochester.
Yes, and if you have spoken about, any solutions regarding the credit score barrier.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, financial counseling is really the core of this program, and so our financial counselors are nationally certified and trained to help clients with savings, debt, and credit. So absolutely thinking about goals related to their credit score will be fundamental to the program.
Councilmember Martin.
What is the $2,000 number based on?
If I'm remembering right, correct me if I'm wrong, we really looked at the eligibility requirements for our homebuyer grant that requires that we put, I believe, $1,500 in. So if a homebuyer applicant has to put at least $1,500 of their own money to receive the City of Rochester homebuyer grant. So I believe that's where we started from. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. And can you walk me through how long going through the three courses may take?
Yes. So essentially, this is really based on each participant's own, work schedule, what they're available to do. So what we imagine will happen is that it will take, between 6 to 8 months for somebody to go through this process. Again, that's considering the idea that they go to one financial counseling session a month, right? So that would be 3 months. Going to one home buyer training, that's the 4th month. Going to the workshop, that's the 5th month, right? So we really wanted this to be as accessible as possible. Our financial counseling sessions are both available in person and over the phone. And so it's on the timeline as best as we can on that particular participant's availability.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
Councilmember Patterson.
So you may well have just covered one of my concerns, but just want to clarify that this is not to be confused with our home buyer assistance program. This is a totally separate program. The home buyer assistance program has $6,000 available for those closing costs. This program ain't that program.
That's correct.
Okay. So, and thank you for also mentioning the fact that this $2,000 can be used for that $1,500 that you can save. So it's more or less getting you on deck and getting you moving through and getting you ready to get to that end. Okay. And the last thing is just a comment. Always send them to NACA. As the guy who worked hard to get NACA here in Rochester, send everybody to NACA. The counseling services are great, and it's character-based lending. It's not credit score-based lending. They're going to get that much additional counseling, and if it takes them 3 years, 5 years to get ready, NACA will be with them the whole time. So just send everybody to NACA. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lupien.
Yeah, I have 2 questions. If there are Rochester employees that are also Head Start families, are they precluded from participating?
I would need to check with law on that.
Okay. And then the second question, I know with what's happening at the federal level with DEI, is there going to be any problem with the requirement about identity?
I would need to check with law, but this funding is from a foundation, so it should be okay.
Okay,
I would defer
thanks.
to law.
Patrick didn't say otherwise there. Angela, I don't know if you could see him, but we could see him shake his head affirmatively.
Yeah. On that question, if it's not federal funding, the feds aren't going to be able to do anything about it.
President Melendez.
Yes, thank you. Excited for this. I'm glad that it stacks with homebuyer services. One question I had in the client journey, is there any final follow-up post-sale that happens with the client?
So that's an interesting point. I don't know if we've explored that yet. I think one of the goals, and this is one of the reasons why we brought in ABC, is that they have a very well-established relationship, caseworker relationship with the clients that would be going through this program. And so the expectation is that, they will have already had a relationship with the clients to then do continuous follow-up with them that they're already doing with these folks that are in the Head Start program. But I think it's a good note, and we can explore that with Head Start.
Great. And one final question. So related to the Head Start program, I'm excited that that's a great place to start, and wondered, is it only specifically Head Start? It says that they're prioritized, or is it going to be opened up to others that might be at 60%?
We don't expect there to be room after we go to
Got
Head
it.
Start, but if there were, we would expand.
Okay.
But we
Thank you.
expect to hit our 60.
And hopefully we'll see this program continue to grow and expand the partners. Thank you very much, Angela. Thank you, Madeline. We will move on to the legislative business. And Councilmember Patterson.
So this one's for law. Can we actually exclude or give preference to Head Start, or are we required to make this available to everyone that meets the basic criteria?
We can get back to you in writing on that.
Thank you.
Okay, introductory number 85, authorizing an amendatory agreement related to the Home Prosper program, what we just heard about. I'll take a motion and a second, please.
Move it.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Introductory number 86, authorizing a grant agreement and appropriation for the positive rent reporting program. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
Yes.
Moved. There's a
Sorry.
question. Councilmember Martin.
Real quick, are there any foreseeable negative impacts of this?
What we are doing is called positive rent reporting. So the expectation is that only on-time rental payments will be reported.
Okay, so if they miss a rental payment, it's not going to be reported, only the positives. Excellent, thank you.
Councilmember Patterson.
How can that be the case? The point is that if you're signing up to report on your payments, it's all of your payments. That sounds like an example of fraud. I mean, the point is normally your rental payments aren't reported, whether for good or ill. And the point is that, at least my thinking on these programs that have been in existence for quite some time, is that the reason why you want to expand it to include rental payments is because for the vast majority of folks, that is a regular, consistent payment that's made on time. So how could it be that you would only report it when it's good and not report it when it's bad? It seems as though it undermines the entire credibility of the system.
So this is something we also do for our Kiva small business loans. If
Okay.
a small business owner opts in, we only do positive reporting. It's relatively common, and in the credit report, I think from a lender perspective, if you see something not reported that's reported the month before and the month after, you do see the picture of probably that was a late payment. I'm sure Madeline has case studies all in her brain. She's a great researcher. But it does show that even with the positive rent reporting only, you still see tenants paying on time more often. So the research does show that that doesn't negatively impact.
Well, I guess what I'm talking about is the credibility of the actual report. With all of it, the whole point of your credit report history is they report the good and the bad. It's a consistent thing, and the point is it is a measure of that person's responsibility. So whatever reason you were late is a whole nother conversation to be had later on, but on time is on time and late is late. And if you only report one side, I don't see it as an accurate report. But if that's what this organization does, and that's how they do business.
Yep. I will say that is the sort of national best practice that we have seen.
Oh, okay.
Councilor Martin.
Could you provide some of these case studies in your brain to us to help us better understand? Thank you.
Sure. So we are working with the Credit Builders Alliance, which is a national nonprofit technical assistance provider. A long jumble there, but they work with housing authorities across the country and have done so for the past 15 years. They're a nonprofit. Essentially, they've worked with several housing authorities, including the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority, which they found that residents who participated in their rent reporting program increased their average credit score by approximately 60 points. In a different study that was done by CBA, their average increase was 23 points. Something that is really important to think about is that, and this is CBA's words, not mine, but the renters who have the lowest credit score or no credit score, so our credit invisible, have the most to gain in a program like this. Right, so the folks who have no credit score, what they found was that in their studies, 100% of residents who started with no credit score became credit visible after they participated in this program. And again, these are residents who are living in housing authorities, right? So they're very limited income or no income and are, as I said, credit visible. So I'm happy to share with you some of these reports. CBA, has a ton of resources on this, and that's why we wanted to bring them in, right? Because they're the national expert on this. And so I'm happy to share that with you.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to move this along for motion in a second,
question.
please.
I have a question.
Okay, last question. Thank you.
So in your case study that was with the housing authority, does our housing authority do positive rent reporting?
So yes, so they're part of there's three housing providers that are part of our pilot program. It's the Rochester Housing Authority, which was a huge win, right? So Rochester Housing Authority, Hart Homes, as well as Rosie Property Management, they had to apply, show a case for why they want to participate in positive only rent reporting, and the Rochester Housing Authority is one of them.
And are there case studies where municipalities have mandated positive credit reporting?
So I have seen case studies that a state has done so. So for example, the state of California, and forgive me, I don't know the year, but it was in the last couple years, they mandated it so that if the housing provider was receiving any form of state funds, it was a requirement that they offered this as a resource to their residents. Again, that's another best practice, right? Residents have to agree to do this, right? And that's the same with our program. And so California is a state that actually pushed legislation forward around that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
I'll take a motion in a second on 86, please.
Move it.
It's been moved.
Second.
And second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Instruction number 87, authorizing an agreement to service the Children's Savings Account and other asset building programs. Any questions, comments, or concerns? If not, I'll take a motion.
Move it.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Instruction number 88, authorizing an agreement relating to social media screening services. Councilmember Martin.
So just for clarity, the Locust Club does their own social media screening?
So I think on this one, we'll respond to any questions in writing just to make sure we're providing a full picture of who does
Okay.
what.
Other questions I have, which I'm okay with it being in writing, like what does it entail exactly, and do other departments in the city use this mechanism for background checks? Thank you.
Any further questions? Councilmember Monroe.
The no RFP justification statement lists the vendor consultant as Authentica. Is that just a misprint, or is Authentica somehow related to Rochester Industries placement?
Tom, I'm happy for you to respond, or else we can do it in writing.
That's their, I guess not their formal business name. That's just the name that they use, but their DBA is what's on the transmittal.
I'm sorry, so their DBA is?
Authentica.
The one on the transmittal is the DBA.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Martin.
Can you describe the relationship with the division, with Authentica and the Chamber of Commerce? It just says they have a relationship, but it doesn't clarify what exactly that relationship is.
We can provide that in writing.
If no further questions, I'll take a motion on 88.
Move it.
It's been moved
Second.
and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Instruction number 89, authorizing an agreement related to CPR, AED, and first aid training. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
Just a comment.
A comment, Vice President Harris.
I support this training because this is moving in the direction of making Rochester a heart-safe city,
Thank you very
which is an initiative of the Mayor Malik Evans, and our County Executive Adam Bello.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments on 89? If not, I'll take a motion.
Move it.
It's been moved.
Second.
And seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Introductory number 92, authorizing an agreement for the 2025 Baldwin Richardson Foods Frederick Douglass HBCU Football Classic. I'll take a quick moment of privilege to say that I thought this was a great event last year. I'm glad the city is committing to doing it again. I understand that part of the reason why it is coming to us as a tweener right now is just because there's a couple of loose ends, and we're trying to pull them together to make sure the event happens again. I just hope that moving forward, we can take some time to think through what is the best sponsorship and structure of an event like this to make sure that we are fairly sharing costs with the school district, fairly sharing costs with other entities who have a lot to do with this game as well. And I know that's not going to happen this year. We're spending $40,000. It's a worthwhile event to do, but this is something we talked about. Karen and I talked about in the legislative meeting, just to make sure there's a bit less of a rush next year and more strategy behind what we're going to do. Any Councilor Vice President had a question, then Councilmember Martin.
Yeah, if you can please describe any changes this year that you foresee compared to last year, or any additional features or eliminated features with the transition.
I assume you want that in writing?
Yeah, absolutely, if you could.
Okay, Councilmember Martin, then President Melendez.
Yes, also in writing, just a report of the impact from last year, how many people attended, if there's any feedback from community about their experiences. Thank you.
Haven't seen a soccer stadium that full in a long time. It was a very, very nice event, but yeah, I'd love to see whatever numbers we have gathered from that. President Melendez?
Yes, finally, also in writing, just who from the Rochester Police Department will be the leads this year in terms of the planning and connection to community. Thank you.
Okay, if no further questions, I'll take a motion on 92.
Move it.
It's been moved.
Second.
And seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And finally, introductory number 93, amending the 24-25 budget and appropriating funds to support a crisis support program at Central Library. Any questions, comments, or concerns? If not, I'll take a motion.
Move it.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Did I miss anything over there?
Just a disclosure
Oh, sorry.
for yourself, but you can discuss the vote, so it's okay.
I disclose that I serve on the library board as an ex officio member who doesn't get to vote. Okay, that concludes the work of the BFG committee. We are adjourned.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I pray that all of you are well and your families are well. This is Public Safety Committee. At this time, I'm going to ask the clerk, would she please call the roll?
Councilmember Lightfoot.
Present.
Councilmember Gruber.
Here.
Councilmember Lupien. Here. Councilmember Martin.
Here.
Councilmember Monroe.
Here.
Councilmember Patterson. Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Vice President Harris.
Here.
President Melendez.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. Let it be known for the record that we are also, all the rest of the council members are in attendance as well. I'll just give the chiefs a few minutes to let them get situated. All right, where we will. Okay, we have no presentations at this particular meeting this month. We'll go right into the business of the Public Safety Committee. Introductory number 90, authorizing an intermunicipal agreement with Monroe County amending the 2024-2025 budget for traffic and crowd control services. Before any questions or comments or concerns, we have an amendment to this particular introductory number 90, and I would like to make a motion to amend introductory number 90 to amend the budgets of the police department and undistributed budget of the police department. The amendment increases to 2024-2025 budget of the police department from $8,700 to $85,700, and the 2024-2025 undistributed budget from $2,200 to $34,700. This amended legislation was submitted by the administration and has been provided to the council members. Can I have a second? Now that we vote on amending introduction number 90 to amend the budget of the police department and undistributed budgets of the police department, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Gruber.
Yes.
Councilmember Lightfoot.
Yes.
Councilmember Lupian.
Yes.
Councilmember Martin.
No.
Councilmember Monroe.
Yes.
Councilmember Patterson.
Absolutely.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Vice President Harris.
Yes.
President Melendez.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, motion carries. Any questions, comments, or concerns on this item as amended? Council President and then Councilmember Martin.
Yes, I just wanted to understand if this was just a clerical error or did something change between the time this was introduced and this meeting?
Excuse me, Chief, can you speak into the mic? Thank you.
I believe it was a clerical error.
Councilmember Patterson actually asked a question about the funding between the 2 fiscal years, and we realized it needed to be amended so that it captured the full amount for the fiscal year.
Got it. Thank you.
Does that answer your question, Mr. President?
Yes, thank you.
Do you have any additional questions, Mr. President?
No, sir. Thank you.
Councilmember Martin and then Lupian.
Yeah, for me, I will not be supporting this because $107 an hour for police overtime at a baseball game while the county is closing down shelters just doesn't feel right to me. So that's my reason I will not be supporting this.
Thank you, Councilman Martin. Any Councilmember Lupian?
My question was also related to the rate of this item. Is 107, is that the normal overtime rate?
That's the normal charge through special events, yes. That includes administrative fees. That isn't necessarily what's going out.
Okay. What does the officer receive per hour?
It would depend on the officer's pay rate. There's a bunch. We can get it.
Oh,
in
okay.
writing, but there's
so I've
scale
seen
pay rates, and then the sergeants, which also work this, are at a different pay rate.
I've seen different rates, and maybe this has changed since the school district legislation went through. I think that was maybe 100. So we adjust the rates
Yes.
that we charge periodically.
Yes. So the charges were adjusted in line with the latest bargaining agreement, and that's when the change was made.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Now we vote on introductory number 90 as amended. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
All right, we got one opposition. Any abstains? Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Gruber.
Yes.
Councilmember Lightfoot.
Yes.
Councilmember Lupian.
Yes.
Councilmember Martin.
No.
Councilmember Monroe.
Yes.
Councilmember Patterson.
Absolutely.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Vice President Harris.
Yes.
President Melendez.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Introductory number 91, authorizing an amendatory agreement for case management software for the Police Accountability Board. Any questions, comments, and/or concerns? Councilmember Monroe.
I'm just wondering for the CRM, is Case IQ something that's used then for all the information that you're dealing with in each case?
As it relates to the intake of a case, yes.
Okay, so the intake, but the investigative portions are not on this CRM. I'm wondering where things are being worked on and saved.
Pardon me for 1 second, Councilman Monroe. Just 1 second, excuse me. Is your mic on, Dr. Mike?
It is.
Okay.
Am I close enough?
There you
Now
go.
can you hear?
Yes.
There
Thank
you go.
you.
I wanted to say my mic.
Can you repeat the question again, Councilman Monroe, please?
Sure, absolutely. So it's talking about the vendor
yes
allowing the PAB to have an electronic portal, and then also it sounds like whoever might be intaking on the phone or something like that can also put it into this management system. So it's a management system only, and it's not something that's where you're saving and keeping all your investigative information, or it is?
That information from the investigators are included in this system, yes.
Okay.
It manages it all.
Great. Thank you.
Are there any other questions, comments, concerns concerning this? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Move it.
It's been
Second.
moved and second. Now we vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
With no further business to come before the Public Safety Committee, we are adjourned. Good evening, everyone. Have a great evening.